If you think you have no idea what's going on with the David Gabriel George recruitment, you are not alone because there are so many fans and people asking about what is going on with David Gabriel George, and a lot of people wondering where he will commit on July 22nd, Wednesday, coming up here soon. I guess you could call this a little bit of a commitment primer as we are going to talk through kind of the final aspects of David Gabriel George and some news we got on Monday where Pete Nakos of On3 put his prediction in for David Gabriel George to commit to Tennessee over Ohio State. Now, if you're not familiar with Pete Nakos, he is kind of the financial, sports business, NIL, a little bit of transfer portal type of guy for On3. But of all the people out there who cover sports business and economics for college football and NIL stuff like that, he is one of the best of the best, and he's one of the guys that has the most sourced information through agents and everybody else. And so when Pete Nakos does put a crystal ball in, or a prediction in, it's a pretty promising prediction for whoever he puts that in for. Now, as we know, predictions can always change. This is not a full prediction that's going to stick with it altogether, with some of the rumors and stuff we've been getting about how much NIL Tennessee might be offering to David and maybe some benefits he might be offering to his family and things like that as well. We have TJ Warner here with us to talk about it all, as TJ has done extensive work on trying to figure out the David Gabriel George situation. TJ, when you saw Pete Nakos put the crystal ball in for David Gabriel George to Tennessee, what were your thoughts, and what have you kind of been deducing and coming up with over the weekend as we talk here now on Monday evening?
Yeah, so we were able to talk about this a little bit last podcast. So this is one thing that I'm not kind of surprised that Pete Nakos put this in, because he's a guy that knows pretty much the down to the exact what the NIL numbers are from each school that's gonna be offering it and at the table here for this commitment Wednesday. So this is something I'm not at all surprised at. This is a guy that definitely looks at the numbers, and he covers most of the portal. And when that comes around, the highest bidder usually gets the guy in the portal. That's not always the case in recruiting. At the high school level, it's the case 60% of the time right now, probably. But this family and this recruitment is a lot different than that. And what we do know is Tennessee is a higher bidder than Ohio State. But the one thing that people are forgetting about is Ohio State's still putting up a generational number for a running back out of high school. I mean, he'd still be the highest paid freshman running back out of high school in the history of college football. Let's not jump over that fact. Ohio State's still putting up a little over $1 million per year for David Gabriel Georges, with the option to obviously grow that as playing time comes about. So people need to understand that Tennessee is putting up a astronomical number, yes, but it's not the numbers that people are throwing out online. It's not 2 million. They're about 2 to 300,000 over Ohio State right now. But we'll see how that really shakes up. But I'm not surprised at all about the Nakos crystal ball prediction to Tennessee, just because he's been leading that way because of the NIL numbers, and we all know beforehand Tennessee's NIL is higher than Ohio State's that they're offering, and I'm not surprised by that package that Tennessee's offering, because they're in need of a running back. They're in need. They missed out on Savion Hyder last cycle that they were really pushing for. They were in the final two get with that with him in Michigan, which he ended up committing to Michigan and is now there on campus now. So they're really at a need for that running back position. And this is one he goes to high school about 2 hours away from Knoxville, and that's a Josh Heupel doesn't really miss out on guys in state either, too, that he makes a priority for a long time. But we go back to it as who does he have his best relationship with? That's Coach Lachlan at the end of the day. And how do they get this done at the end of the day, too? Is it's gonna be Ryan Day, and he's gonna have to make a closing call to make sure that he gets it done just like he did with Chris Henry last cycle.
Yeah, Chris Henry Jr., I know everybody was kind of concerned about that when he said he was going to be committing or I guess announcing where he was going to sign on the Pat McAfee show. And so there was a little bit of concern after Brian Hartline was moving on
Mhm.
to South Florida and everything else there. So that definitely had some drama, not nearly as long of the drama. I mean, here
Mhm.
we're going on 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks at this point of just insane drama ever since the Tennessee visit. I think that was on July 5th. So about 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago at this point. So it's very interesting seeing all of this stuff come out here. I think it lines up with exactly the narratives that we've been talking about with David Gabriel George, that Tennessee has the higher offer. And not only does Tennessee have the higher offer, but Tennessee is not afraid to incentivize it a little bit too
Mhm.
for the family, I guess you could say. I'm not even saying that's wrong. I mean, it's the day and age of college football and NIL and everything else to pay players. So if you got it, I guess go for it if you really want the player. But there's definitely an aspect of Ohio State having to do a little bit extra, maybe a little bit more than what they've been doing in the next coming days before the commitment on Wednesday. TJ, do you think that's gonna be a higher offer? Do you think that's just gonna be the call that locks it in from Ryan Day? I mean, is there anything else Ohio State can do at this point? They offered his best friend, right?
Mhm.
They brought him into campus and gave him a blueprint for his entire career, which the family obviously wanted. The family wants him to be taken care of not only off the field, but on the field with good coaching and development and everything else. I mean, is there anything Ohio State can do here to try and lock it in before the commitment on Wednesday?
Well, the one thing I wanna make sure is a very well-known factor is NIL is not as much of a priority in this recruitment as people like to say. I've spoke to DGG and the family and close people to that camp as well, and NIL is not a factor. In fact, his uncle, the one that talks to the media the most, is a really big Ohio State fan. If NIL was a factor here and Ohio State was nowhere near what Tennessee was at, I'm sure his uncle would say something to Coach Day and be like, "Alright, you're not in the playing field yet to make sure that he has a realistic chance to go to Ohio State." I'm sure that would happen, and Ohio State would make sure ends meet to make sure they get the guy that they want, because they're pushing for him. They've put all resources to him in the last 2 cycles for a reason. Like, this is a guy that they think is a generational talent at that running back position, a Jeremiah Smith type running back, per se. Like, that's really what they're trying to do here. So Coach Loughlin, like we've said plenty of times, has the best relationship with the camp and with the family there. They even call him a family friend. Both his parents are saying that. His uncle says that as well. They consider him a family friend, because he just talks to him all the time. You know, I back I think 2 years ago, he was telling me he had Coach Loughlin talks to me 3 times a week, and that's when they were recruiting 2025s at the time. Like, Coach Loughlin has made him a priority for the past 2 years for a reason. They made it a priority to get to this last stretch, and now it's time to close it out. And how do we really close it out? I think it's gonna, like I said earlier, I think it's gonna come down to Ryan Day. He really built his relationship and foundation, at the official visit weekend. They said they had a great relationship with the whole staff at Tennessee and a great relationship with Coach Loughlin at Ohio State. But Ryan Day really opened up on that official visit weekend and really opened the whole family's eyes of like, all right, this is actually what Ohio State is and what they're about and the culture that's here and the whole coaching staff pedigree that's here as well. They got to really know more about Ryan Day the person, not Ryan Day the coach. I think that was very vital for this recruitment. And how does Ryan Day close at the end of the day? That's up to Coach Day and his recruiting philosophy. But I think he can make that final call and relate back to the official visit of here's how we're gonna build on this relationship and here's how we're gonna use you at Ohio State and end up closing the deal. I think that's still very possible, even with people saying this Pete Nakos prediction or the NIL offer at Tennessee is too big and too steep of a hill to climb.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Pete Nakos mention that there was ultra confidence coming
Mhm.
from the Tennessee side more than anything else? I mean, this isn't like he's talking to Ohio State and Ohio State's just like, "Oh, I think we lost them," or something, but seems like it's coming more from Tennessee is
Yeah.
saying, "We
Yeah.
really like what we're offering here, and we think he's gonna go with it."
Yeah, they love the NIL package they're offering. They think they're throwing the house plus extra, like that, like at that NIL offer package. But the Knoxville sources are really confident about it as well. That's why Pete Nakos, he's got great sources there, and I know that Knoxville camp is really confident and excited for Wednesday's commitment announcement. But the one thing I want to make clear to everyone too is wherever he announces Wednesday is the school he's going to ultimately sign with. This is not a guy he's taken too much time to go through the whole process and then flip towards signing day. Wherever he goes Wednesday is where he's gonna stick. So, if Ryan Day is gonna make a move, now's the time to do it, or else you're gonna lose on the five-star running back. But I think Knoxville can be confident, but I also think Columbus can be confident. That's the whole part, is the circle for what they've been telling everyone in the media for this high profile recruiting comparison is it's not much. Like, the circle is very small, and it's very, intimate with just his family that's not really talking outside to any sources. So that's the hard part is, like, everyone is really going in blind July 22nd to that commitment date. There's gonna be a lot of Ohio State people there. There's gonna be a lot of Tennessee people there that have absolutely no idea which way it's gonna go. So we'll see July 22nd where it's gonna go. I It's still truly a 50-50 battle. Just because Pete Nakos put in a prediction to Tennessee doesn't mean, other people don't have predictions to Ohio State. There's still 3 predictions out there, on 3 to Ohio State, Steve Wiltfong being one of those. Those very well could flip. There's still time for that, but I'm still confident that Ohio State and Ryan Day can pull it out at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. No matter what happens here in the commitment, that is most likely going to be where he sticks with. I think the only thing that could really affect that is maybe like Tennessee just bombs this year and Tennessee decides to move on from Josh Heupel. I mean, he's obviously got a very good relationship with Heupel, but I don't see that happening. As much as Tennessee is not on the same level as Ohio State as a program, they still have a pretty good roster this year, and I don't think they're just going to completely bomb and have like a 3-9 or a 4-8 season or something like that. So we'll see what happens. Let's talk worst case scenario here, TJ. All right, we obviously know if he commits
Mhm.
to Ohio State, they're done. They got their running back. They got what they need. They're going to keep moving on with the class and probably start working more toward 2028, which they kind of have been from what I've been hearing right now, and I'm sure you've been hearing the same.
Mhm.
If Ohio State does not get David Gabriel George, all right, worst case scenario, they do not get him. Ohio State, one of the things they do really well is seeing guys senior film and stuff like that. So there could be maybe a few guys that pop up later on that we're not aware of. But are there any guys that you're aware of, TJ, that Ohio State might be coming after in the 2027 class if Wednesday does not go their way with David Gabriel George?
Yeah, well, Coach Lachlan made it a point to have a couple guys at least schedule official visits to Ohio State, just knowing that they were waiting on David Gabriel George's answer first. So that's the whole thing here. So Jaden Miles is a name that comes to mind. He's a Florida State commit. He did make a trip to Columbus for official visit. The day after he left the official visit, he committed to Florida State, knowing that all right, I'm not allowed to commit on this offer right now. Thank you for the OV, but I'm going to Florida State because I'm not a priority right now. That's one they could come back to. I don't see that one turning back to Ohio State's way though. I don't think they're going to throw all the DGG money at a running back that they don't love near as much. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. So I don't think people know that, hey, just because we have all this money allocated over here now that we can go throw it at someone else just to make sure we get someone. That's not how Ohio State's going to operate here. They're going to operate and bring it in the right NIL value, no matter who you are or where position you're playing too. So that's something to think about too. Another name that comes to mind is Nigel Newkirk. He committed to Alabama, had a official visit scheduled to Ohio State, didn't end up making that official visit. He committed to Alabama after his OV there. They were able to convince him here, like, all right, here's the NIL package you have. When you go to Ohio State, they're waiting on DGG's answer first. They're not gonna really have you as a priority either. That's when I could see them coming back to. I know Coach Lachlan absolutely loves Nigel and that game. So that's one I would be most intrigued about, 2027 name-wise right now, that we know would be high on the board. And then obviously senior film-wise, there could be some under the radar guys that really shine their senior year and have midseason senior year film come out. And Ohio State kind of works their way back that way and tries to find someone out. Because running back is a position that there is a lot of late bloomers at in the high school ranks. That just is what it is. Bodies don't get developed completely till senior year, sometimes junior year at best. At earliest at that position usually, and then there's, the anomalies of DGG. That was a great high school running back in 7th grade pretty much, but those are the type of, skill players, though, that can be a late bloomer, and then I think really the big thing that people aren't talking enough about is that if DGG does not commit to Ohio State this Wednesday, they will probably go in the portal and get another big player, big name running back, out of the portal. Then they're gonna allocate that money towards that position need then at that point. So it's who is that name in the portal that comes in? Obviously, we don't know who's gonna enter the portal after the season, but who is some of those names and who are some of those players that could come up after senior year film? Those would be the big replacement needs, that to keep an eye on for Ohio State.
Yeah, I always think the portal is kinda like a little bit of a nice backup option. I don't think it should
Mhm,
ever be anybody's plan A at Ohio State. Maybe at other programs, it's a good option to have there. You still probably wanna get another running back in this class, and I know some people are maybe rolling their eyes thinking, "Oh, you're gonna flip a commitment. Sure, sure, sure." They have flipped a number of commitments lately. You look think of Jay Timmons last season, he was committed to Florida State, he flipped on over to Ohio State. There's been kind of a narrative out there that Ohio State doesn't flip players, but here in the last cycle or two, they've kind of dispelled that rumor a little bit. So this whole idea of like guys aren't
mhm,
going to flip, and in today's day and age, behind the scenes recruiting wise, guys are committing earlier and earlier for different
100%.
reasons, I guess we could say. We don't need to get into
Mhm,
all the rumors of it all there, but I definitely think that the portal is a viable option. TJ, do you have any thoughts on Ohio State fans that might be concerned of the idea of the portal? Because yes, it worked out very well with Trey Sermon back in the day, right? Worked out very well with Quinshawn Judkins, but you had some guys lately that maybe were not some of the biggest portal signings, I guess you could say. You had CJ Donaldson last
mhm,
season, the converted tight end. You have Jacoby Johnson this season from Florida, who could possibly be very good for Ohio State this year, but definitely looks like Bo Jackson is probably going to be more of that
mhm.
lead back there in that backfield. Certainly, Ohio State probably wants him to be that as well. Do you have any thoughts on Ohio State fans that might be concerned and saying, the portal doesn't seem like a great idea to me? Look at the type of guys we've gotten the past couple years. And like I said, in fairness, we haven't seen Jacoby Johnson yet. So
Mhm.
it's not exactly fair to say you didn't get the best player because Jacoby Johnson could come out and be the best running back on this team. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the portal is definitely something in Ohio State's case to use wisely. They're always going to recruit high school players first and try to develop those players. But in the day of age, where do you pay $1 million kid out of high school that probably won't play year one, or do you pay $1 million kid out of the portal that can be an instant impact to your team? Obviously, you're going to pick the portal guy that can help you right now most of the time. But on Ohio State's aspect of it, they're gonna use the portal, like you said earlier, to kinda as a backup plan to supplement certain spots that they're losing. Because the portal works 2 ways. You can gain players, you can lose players, and, Ohio State will bring in 20 to 25 freshmen every year, but all those 25 freshmen are not gonna stick through Ohio State throughout their whole 4 years, 4-year career, now 5-year career. That's just not gonna be the case. They're gonna go look for other opportunities in the NIL stage in this day of era. So they have to use that to supplement to get depth sometimes too. That's really where you've looked for Ohio State to really supplement the portal recently. There's a few anomalies, like Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Downs, Will Howard. Those type of players they plugged and play for starters. But those were guys mainly that they were at least familiar with out of high school as well, that they were in those recruitments, especially with Caleb Downs was in the final 3 for that one, and then was able to come back and be in it again after he hit the portal. So there's anomalies like that, but Ryan Day and his team, the one thing that he's really good at is adapting to the times, and that's one thing that I think in the past that they've really recruited only out of the portal with guys they had a connection with, whether it's high school recruiting or other coaches coming over, like Terry Moore, for instance, coming from Duke. I mean, McArary has a Duke reputation as well, so there was already that connection there. But they're going to start getting more aggressive. I wouldn't be surprised this next offseason if they get more aggressive with people they don't really have connections with and start reaching out that way. Because let's just be honest, Ohio State's one of the top paying schools in the NIL era. I mean, there's a couple ahead of them, but Ohio State, for one, top to bottom roster is one of the top paying schools. So it's not like they have a lack of money to do it. They definitely have the resources and wherewithal to do all that. And I wouldn't be surprised if the portal is more of a not of a plan A, but more of a plan B to kind of supplement more of the depth and then instant impact starters as they come through in that portal.
Love it, love it. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, TJ does a great job over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you like what you heard here, go on over and check out his writings there. TJ, you getting warmed up a little bit there at Buckeye
Yeah.
Huddle. Let
Yeah.
people know, the content that you're putting out over there. What are you writing about? Obviously, recruiting. What's some of the stuff that people can expect on a weekly basis from you?
Yeah, at TJ Warner underscore, you can find me on Twitter, and then at BuckeyeHuddle.com, you can find all my stuff, writing wise, anything recruiting related. We're finishing out the 2027 class, have a lot of 2028 pieces coming up here soon because that class is ramping up a lot more than people think. So 2028 will be here a lot quicker than you think. So go out to BuckeyeHuddle.com and check out all the 2027, 2028 pieces I had coming up. And then obviously, you can find me on some random podcasts doing some features like this, and then sharing intel as much as I can.
Very good, very good. Yep, we're gonna have TJ on here quite a bit, especially in the off season with recruiting, and then during the season, we'll make sure we get TJ on here and stuff to deliver us some more of that great info that he has. All right, everybody, thanks for listening and watching here at the Buckeye Huddle podcast. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.